It was a peaceful afternoon in Los Angeles, and the tension that existed within the expansive Forrester family was seething behind the beautiful surface. Taylor Hayes had been carrying the burden of her past for many years, which consisted of an intolerable combination of feelings of remorse, heartache, and loneliness. She could still vividly recall the day that her daughter, Phoebe Forrester, was tragically snatched from her when she was involved in that deadly vehicle accident. She had found ways to move forward, despite the fact that the anguish had never completely subsided, despite the fact that the sadness had nearly destroyed her. However, after that, the whisperings began. In the shadows of the fashion industry, there is a rumor that is so ridiculous that it is impossible to believe. Does Phoebe Forrester still exist? This was something that Taylor initially disregarded, but when Steffi Forrester contacted her with a sense of urgency in her voice, Taylor's heart skipped a beat. While Steffi was on the phone with her mother, she uttered in a hurried voice, "I don't know how to tell you this, but Phoebe was just seen by me." The words weighed so heavily in the atmosphere. As Taylor sat in her office, she became aware of a surge in her heart rate. She got to her feet and grabbed the edge of her desk for support as she stood up. "Steffi, that is not even possibility. This Phoebe has left. You had been present." During the conversation, Steffi interrupted, "I don't know what's going on, but she's back. You, Mom, need to go to her as soon as possible." As Taylor hurried out the door, she made a mistake and dropped the phone. Her heart was racing. The world that Taylor had been living in was about to be destroyed once more if it turned out that Phoebe had managed to survive in some way. As Taylor arrived at the Forrester mansion, the atmosphere was thick with expectancy, and the mansion was abnormally silent. As soon as she stepped inside, she quickly became aware that something was not quite right. Phoebe's childhood memories were etched into every nook and cranny of the house, yet it was not the same home that she had become accustomed to. That location has a haunting vibe. Later on, she came across her. When Phoebe Forrester was standing in the dark light of the living room, she appeared as though she had not aged a single day. She was the same luminous young woman who had won hearts with her generosity, the same daughter that Taylor had lamented over her passing. However, there was something about her that was distinguishable. Her eyes were deeper and more piercing. During the years that she had been absent, it seemed as though she had been bearing the burden of the entire world on her shoulders. Taylor was unable to breathe because her throat was so tight. "Phoebe, are you sure it's you?" The expression on Phoebe's face was unreadable as she slowly turned. "To my mother, hello." There was a brief pause in Taylor's movement. To make sure that this was not a dream, she wanted to run forward, hold her daughter, and make sure that she was awake. But the icy tone in Phoebe's words prevented her from continuing. Although she had hoped for a friendly reunion, this was not the case. Phoebe's reappearance, on the other hand, caused a sensation similar to that of a storm on the horizon, one that had the potential to destroy everything that was in its path. "Where have you been recently? In what way? How is that even possible?" Taylor stumbled over it. The look of Phoebe penetrated her entire being. "Mother, are you interested in finding out where I have been? I have been in purgatory. As a result of you." Deep within her chest, Taylor experienced the pain that Phoebe's comments caused her. Because she was at a loss for words, she stumbled backwards. In what way had she acted? Why would Phoebe hold her responsible for something that was so inconceivable? In a hushed tone, Taylor said to Phoebe, "I don't understand," and her voice was shaking. "I was under the impression that you had passed away. We believe that we have lost you." Phoebe's face broke into a sour smile as she looked at her. "You never forgot about me. You have discarded me, just like you have discarded everything else that does not fit into your imaginary world that you have created for yourself." The allegation has a more profound impact than Taylor could have possibly envisaged. Her entire life, she had held herself responsible for the accident, blaming herself for not being able to protect her daughter. But now this? It was not merely a miracle that Phoebe came back. Rather, it was a reckoning. "I solemnly swear, Phoebe, that I would never have done anything to cause you harm. You were the center of my existence." Phoebe sneered as she continued to pace the room, her cool facade betraying a boiling wrath that she was barely able to suppress. "Is this your life? Does it explain why you allowed me to vanish? Why did you never question the manner in which I passed away? It was simpler to believe that I had disappeared than it was to deal with the disaster that you had created, right? The beat of Taylor's heart quickened. To Phoebe, I say. Phoebe abruptly interrupted her with a no, her tone becoming increasingly cold. You do not have the right to explain. Not at this time. Years were allotted to you to find it out. For years, you had the opportunity to search for me, but you never did. Taylor had the sensation that the ground underneath her was beginning to give way. She was completely unable to fathom what was taking place. How was Phoebe able to stay alive? For what reason hadn't she returned earlier? And why did she feel such a strong sense of animosity? Taylor's eyes began to flood up with tears. I ask you, Phoebe, to just tell me what took place. Please, I beg you. Phoebe remained motionless, her gaze fastened on Taylor's with such ferocity that it sent shivers down her spine. Mother, according to the truth, I was never actually dead. It was because of something you did that I was taken away and hidden away. As of right now, I have returned to make you pay for it. After some time had passed, Phoebe's homecoming caused the entire Forrester family to be thrown into a state of disarray. Ridge was completely taken aback and had a hard time comprehending the gravity of the situation. The emotions that Steffi and Thomas had were conflicted. They were happy to see their sister again, but they were also confused about the anger that Phoebe shown against Taylor. To a greater extent than everyone else, however, Taylor sensed herself dissolving. The more Phoebe talked, the more Taylor started to second-guess everything she had previously believed to be true about the past. There were dark truths that Phoebe alluded to, choices that Taylor had made a long time ago that had led to his current situation. Taylor, however, was unable to recall it. Despite her best efforts, the pieces of her recollection refused to come together. On the other hand, Phoebe made her presence known throughout this period. She returned to Forrester Creations as if she had never left, and throughout her return, she enchanted the workers with her fashion sense and her charming personality. On the other hand, beneath that attractive front, there was an anger that was building up and never entirely dissipated. It was something that Taylor could see in every contact and every gaze. The purpose of Phoebe's visit was to exact revenge on her, and she was not going to stop until Taylor's entire world was in ruins. When Taylor was ultimately confronted with the reality, it was like a ton of bricks falling on her. When Phoebe was in the middle of one of their heated arguments, she finally let slip the truth that she had been keeping hidden for the entire time. A number of years ago, prior to the vehicle accident that is said to have resulted in Phoebe's death, Taylor had, without her knowledge, become enmeshed in a perilous web that included unlawful dealings and criminal elements tied to her previous career as a psychiatrist. A patient of hers, whom Taylor had assumed she could assist, had instead used her knowledge and faith in her to lure her into participating in a risky scam. That patient was the one who was accountable for Phoebe's death, as defined by the medical term. The truth was that they had seized Phoebe in order to use her as leverage against Taylor. This was done as a form of retribution for something that Taylor had done in the past, something that she had long ago forgotten. You could have stopped it, Mother, Phoebe snarled, her eyes welling up with tears. You could have stopped it. You had the ability to save me, but you were so preoccupied with attempting to save the lives of strangers that you failed to notice that your own daughter was in potential danger. The weight of Phoebe's comments suffocated Taylor, and she sank into a chair that she was sitting in. It was impossible for her to count the number of times she had failed. However, the most unfortunate aspect was that Phoebe was correct. Taylor had been oblivious to the situation since she was so preoccupied with her work and her desire to save other people. Moreover, by doing so, she had let down the one person who was the most important to her. I'm sorry, Taylor stammered, her voice barely audible as she uttered the words. Phoebe, I am so sorry for this. On the other hand, the damage had already gone in. The anger that Phoebe felt was not something that could be calmed down by expressing regret. Even with everything going on, Phoebe found herself in a state of conflict. Although she had intended to cause Taylor to endure pain, she was caught off guard when the exact individuals who had ruined her life turned their attention to her mother. She was divided between her need for retribution and the unmistakable relationship that she still felt with Taylor, and his sentiments became a maelstrom of turmoil as a result. In the last showdown, which was a dramatic one, Taylor found herself in a precarious situation. She was trapped inside of an abandoned warehouse where she had been brought there by an unknown adversary from her past. Phoebe presented herself at the precise moment when her life was about to be taken away. It was a setup. The mother and daughter, who were acting as allies for the first time, stood together for the first time. Phoebe, who was filled with wrath, was not going to let the individuals who had taken her life to now take the life of her mother from her. They fought off their assailants in a struggle that caused their hearts to race, and nevertheless they managed to escape with their lives. Following the incident, the relationship between Taylor and Phoebe remained shattered, but there was a glimmer of optimism that things could turn out differently. Despite the fact that they had survived, the emotional wounds were severe. Would it ever be possible for them to recover completely? The final scene leaves the audience with an unsettling question. Taylor, who is now safe, sits in her peaceful home, staring out the window, and wonders if Phoebe would ever be able to forgive her. In spite of this, there is a shadowy figure that watches over the darkness, serving as a constant reminder that the threat is not yet ended and that Taylor's world could come tumbling down once more at any moment.